This is Whiskey Whereabouts. I'm Tim, and you don't need me to tell you that this is Johnnie Walker Black Label. Maybe the most recognizable blended Scotch. It's on the shelf of every bar, restaurant, or shop you go into. It's a staple of cocktails. It's got a 12-year age statement. But is it any good? My whiskey journey has taken me to Scotland and back. I've explored whiskey education, tastings, and distilleries from Islay to Speyside. And now my journey continues here, with you, on Whiskey Whereabouts. This is the first bottle of Johnnie Walker blended Scotch that I've ever reviewed on the channel. So why now? Well, the day this video drops is July 25, and it is John Walker's birthday. Yes, he was a real guy, and he was a grocer, and I believe he was born in 1805. He started blending his own whiskey, and it was originally not, well, before there was a Johnnie Walker brand or the color label system. It was called the Old Highland Whiskey at the time. We're talking 1860s, way back in the day. And it's actually his son Alexander, which says John Walker and Sons on the bottle, who grew the brand. This would evolve, this original blend, into the Johnnie Walker Black Label, and he, the son, Alexander, would be the figure who grew the distribution and eventually become what it has become, which is absolutely ubiquitous. We have a 12-year age statement on the Johnnie Walker Black Label, and that positions it one step up in the core range from the base sort of entry-level Johnnie Walker, the red label, the non-age stated, which is positioned by price opposite the sort of non-age stated offerings from the sort of big blend brands, the Dewar's White Label, the famous Grouse. So here we've stepped up. We've got a 12-year age statement. It's about the only interesting or noteworthy spec we're going to encounter with this bottle. It's a 40% whiskey with fake color. It's a blended whiskey that is said to be made up of approximately 40 different whiskeys. So the red label is better selling. It's cheaper. That makes sense. And it is known to be a little bit spicier, a little bit smokier. The black label is intended to be a little bit more subtle in comparison to its sort of rambunctious younger sibling. It's supposed to be a little bit sweeter. So if we've got 40 whiskeys, we're going to have plenty of grain whiskey in here. But it's going to be more, a lot more distilleries whiskey is going to be in this bottle than the advertised sort of foundational sort of four-corner whiskeys that the visitor centers are built around. The Clynelish, Cardew, Kalila, and Glenkinchie that are the homes of Johnnie Walker, a place for the visitors to gather, since Johnnie Walker is not made by a single distillery that one can go visit. You can go to the Johnnie Walker Experience on the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, but the point of that branding is to kind of give a foundation, not to sort of reveal what is actually in the bottle. And so we don't know what's in here. As I look down at the bottle from this angle, the top of the cap is exposed to me, which prominently features the 12. But it's interesting to me that the 12 is pretty subtle. It's all the way here at the bottom underneath the little walking man sort of logo. And the color code is doing the heavy lifting here and positioning this one against the red, but the 12-year age statement doesn't seem to be a huge selling point. Let's find out if the age statement has made a big difference and should be a selling point justifying a big, I think this is about 50% more expensive than the red label. I go in on the nose. The first thing I have to do is I really have to swirl this a little bit. This is not roaring up out of the glass, but there's certainly a nose here, and it's certainly developed nicely. You can see where the label is. This is the half-size bottle, the 375 ml, but coming down to almost halfway point. I've had this bottle open for 2 weeks, and it's a good thing I have. This one's come a long way from that neck pour. That first pour was not spectacular, and I will get into some of the notes about what it was that I found off-putting, both the nose and the finish, frankly, on this whiskey. There's a pretty nice vanilla. There's a sort of a cookie, like a baked quality to that sweetness, probably with a sort of subtle peat influence that's there. When I first nosed this whiskey, it had a very prominent nail polish remover note that was not very pleasant across the top that you had to kind of let burn off a little bit and acclimate. That has been sort of eliminated. It's been digested or evolved out of, and what I'm getting now is a little bit more. It's pretty subtle. It's marketed as more subtle in the specific area of this, the way the smoke is manifesting. You and I might want more, but that's what it's going for. So you really got to kind of lean in to find it. It's more just kind of a suggestion of warmth, but I have a sort of a struck sort of match kind of quality now that it has opened up. There was one other element on this nose. A real sour, fermenty note. Way out of balance. Saison type of note. It was really prominent on this nose the first couple of pours. With a little time now, getting the level down, it has evolved, and it has kind of evolved. It was sort of a red apple, mealy before, and now it's more of a riper kind of apple, orchard fruit. There's a peach element now. Much more palatable on the nose than it was. This one really needed to have a little bit of time and a little bit of air. So yeah, on the palate on this whiskey, it's 40% blended whiskey. So you got that grain whiskey in there. It just doesn't have much of a presence on the palate. Subtle is how it's being sort of positioned. Simple. Muted are words that I'd probably use to describe this. It really is just kind of there in terms of a lack of a real mouthfeel, any sort of presence or texture to the whiskey. In terms of flavor, caramel, cinnamon, and not much else on the palate. It really hasn't evolved much. I'm happy to say that the nose and the finish have evolved. The palate's kind of stuck right where it was. There is a sort of an ashy quality, but it's not really coating the tongue sort of ashy. It's just sort of kind of a suggestion. Like maybe there's some ash that had fallen on the whiskey and kind of been dissolved in it. That's more how I would phrase it, but it's there, and there's something of the casks there. It's not enough to have a real sort of bitter or oak spice present, but there's something there of the oak. Not very green, very casky on the palate. Now on the finish, very vanilla, caramel, apple, and it has much more presence than the palate. It's not a lot of heat here, obviously, but it's something. You get a nice kind of sort of bloom of something announcing itself on the finish. What you also have is the most prominent sort of presence of a peat sort of element. There is a sort of a peat liveliness, sensation, sort of on the sides of your mouth when that finish, which is quite short, first sort of arrives, and it's the last thing to fade as this sort of develops through. There's one more element here that I have to talk about because this has been the biggest sort of journey I've been on with this whiskey, and it's a reason why this has never been a favorite of mine. When I first had the sort of neck pour, the finish was overwhelmed with this bitter taste element that survived the short finish and just remained, that sort of dominated everything. It was that sort of inside of the sort of walnut shell kind of bitter, really out of balance, really sharp. I would argue maybe the most prominent single flavor note of any of the three stages of the whiskey, and it really is not sort of welcoming. And when I've had this neat in small pours before, I've always had that sort of experience leaving me feeling like, yeah, I've had enough of that. With time, this too has mellowed. It has, I have to acknowledge that with a little air in this bottle and having had a couple of pours, this has been incorporated. It's still there, but it's there at a volume that works now. I started listing flavor elements and they were sweet, vanilla, caramel, some fruit. then you've got a little ballast now with that bitter. It's not my favorite, but it is certainly how it should be. This is a, you wouldn't think it, because, we're talking about, a whiskey that is, with a screw top cap that is just kind of have on your bar, open it up, and go. This is one, I think, if you're going to have it neat in a glass like this, that really needs a week or two to open up and a couple of small pours out of that bottle. And this is a small bottle, so I'm probably getting a little bit more of that faster sort of influence, so it's more noticeable to me. But it really needed it. But here is the thing. This whiskey is not meant to be noted neat out of a Glencairn. It's supposed to be with water, in a highball, in a cocktail. That's how it's served when I was at Diageo distilleries, at tastings, and they would give a sort of view in a tasting flight. They would serve Johnnie Walker in a highball, and that is, it lives on every bar, so it's there for you for that purpose. But let's see, we're in the business of investigation. What does water do to this already very subtle, they say, mild whiskey? Yeah, what nose? There's not much left. We've washed a lot of the nose away, but I will say that the fruit element has gone very peach, more so than the apple that is kind of at the base of this. There's some caramel. Sweetness kind of condensed a little bit. There is a little bit toasty kind of, I don't know if I would say it's ashy, but there's something. There's a warmth. There's something there from the peat element, but it's really pretty faint here. Let's see about the palate. It's more buttery. That caramel's gone like Werther's original candy. There's nothing else there. There really isn't much here. And on the finish, there is a toasty quality still, the vanilla. That bitter is way down in the mix. So the water has accomplished, the time in the water has really lowered the volume on that one note that I really thought was out of joint. There's not a lot here, but boy, is there nothing to offend you or rub you the wrong way. It's incredibly sippable and drinkable, with what I thought was maybe off notes at the beginning, completely eliminated. So where do I come out with this whiskey? It's definitely one for me that I enjoy in a highball. It pairs really well with ginger ale. It's a nice, especially summertime here in my hemisphere, on ice, nice pour, a nice pour of this with ginger ale mixed up. Very refreshing, and the ginger ale can't drown it out. Some of those sharper notes are paired with that. I think that's how you're supposed to have this, or in a cocktail. It's a whiskey in the glass. I had it with I pulled out the famous grouse. This is certainly more rounded, more robust, I feel like, in the sort of flavors than the famous grouse. I probably prefer the nose, though, and maybe the finish on the famous grouse. I certainly prefer the palate here. It's much richer. This is, $30 or so. And your famous grouse, your white label is about 20, low 20s. So you're almost $10 more. I probably prefer Dewar's white label, to be honest. I was just going to sip it. But in a cocktail, again, this stands up probably better than the other two. And I think that's what it's for. So I'm going to say 1.25 glasses on the Johnnie Walker Black Label. The same rating, I think, that I gave the famous grouse. I think this is where it's supposed to be, and it's priced where the Dewar's 12 label is, or the equivalents. It's priced in that price category where it's meant to be, given what it is, with age-dated whiskey, and it is, I think, probably more rewarding as something you stock in the bar. I'm not going to reduce it because I can't say it's overpriced given what it is in that market. So it's 1.25 is the final rating for the Black Label. Let me know if you've got a strong preference for any of these blends in that sort of first entry level, or up here, that's the sort of 12 level, that's their second level for your cocktails. If you enjoy these in a highball, soda, water, How does this one measure up, and is this the one that you stock on your bar? Let us know in the comments. It's summertime. We can all use some pointers for that type of experience. In the meantime, make sure that you subscribe if you haven't. Hit this big button. It's going to pop up right over here so you don't miss any of the videos that are coming in the future. I'll see you on the next one.